He was my husband. But before this happened, I felt invisible. For years, I walked through my life like a shadow inside my own home. My name is Claire Mitchell, and from the outside, most people thought I had everything a woman could ask for. A husband who worked hard, 2 children who were healthy and growing, a neat little house in a suburban neighborhood with maple trees that turned gold every autumn. If you drove past our home in the evenings, you might have seen the porch light glowing warmly, and you might have assumed the life inside was just as warm. But behind those walls, there was a silence that grew heavier with each passing day, a silence that pressed against me until I almost forgot who I was. My husband, Michael, was a good man in so many ways. He was steady, reliable, and serious about providing for us. He left early every morning with his briefcase in hand, his tie neatly knotted, his shoes polished to a quiet shine. He came home late, often tired, often distracted. He loved the kids, our son, Tyler, and our daughter, Emily, but most days he moved through the house like a guest in his own story. I suppose he thought he was doing his best by working long hours and keeping us comfortable. And maybe he was. But for me, the woman who had once been his bride, the one who once lit up his eyes when I walked into a room, I felt as though I had become invisible. At first, I told myself it was just a phase. Life gets busy, jobs demand too much, children need constant attention. I convinced myself it wasn't so bad. But as months turned into years, the distance between us became a canyon, and I stood on the other side, waving across the gap, hoping he would look up and notice me. Sometimes I would put on a dress I hadn't worn in years, cook his favorite meal, light candles on the dinner table after the kids were asleep. I wanted to remind him of who we used to be, who I still was inside. But most of the time, he barely looked up from his laptop or his phone. One evening, after tucking Emily into bed, I stood by the window and looked out at the quiet street. The night air carried the sound of crickets, and the moon hung low, silver and round. I whispered to myself, almost without realizing it, "Do you even see me anymore?" My reflection stared back at me, tired eyes and a face that felt unfamiliar. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten how to laugh easily, how to feel light. I missed myself almost as much as I missed him. Things came to a head on a Saturday morning in late spring. Michael had promised to take Tyler to his baseball game, but he got called into work at the last minute. Tyler's disappointment was written all over his face, but he swallowed it down, not wanting to make a fuss. I drove him to the game instead, cheering louder than ever from the bleachers, trying to fill the silence where his father's voice should have been. Afterward, as we got ice cream, Tyler looked at me and asked softly, "Mom, why doesn't Dad come anymore? Doesn't he want to?" That question hit me like a stone. I brushed his hair back and told him his dad loved him very much, that work just kept him busy. But inside, I knew it wasn't just about work. It was about being present, about choosing to see the people right in front of you before they disappeared. That night, after the kids were asleep, I found Michael in his usual spot, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, spreadsheets glowing on the screen. I stood there for a long moment, gathering courage, and finally said, "Michael, I need to talk to you." He barely looked up. "Just a minute, Claire. I've got to finish this report." "No," I said firmly, my voice surprising even me. "Not in a minute. Now." He closed the laptop slowly and gave me a look that was half irritation, half curiosity. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I repeated, almost laughing. "Michael, I feel like I don't exist in this house anymore. You come home, you sit down, and the only conversations we have are about bills or schedules. Do you even know what my favorite color is anymore? Do you even remember the last time we danced together in the living room like we used to?" He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Claire, I'm doing this for us. For you and the kids. I thought you understood that." I shook my head. "I understand you're working hard. But what's the point of all of this if you lose us along the way? I'm here, Michael. I've been here every single day, waiting for you to notice me. And I feel invisible." For the first time in a long time, he didn't have an immediate answer. He just looked at me, really looked at me, like he hadn't in years. His eyes softened, and I could see the man I had fallen in love with flicker there for a moment. But then he looked down again, and the silence stretched between us. The days that followed were tense. Michael tried in small ways. I noticed he came home a little earlier, asked about my day, even sat with me while I folded laundry. But the wall between us was still there, built up over years of neglect. I didn't know if it could be torn down. Then something unexpected happened. Emily came home from school with a drawing. It was a picture of our family, me, Michael, Tyler, and herself. But in the picture, Michael was drawn smaller, almost faded, standing off to the side while the three of us held hands in the middle. When she showed it to him, she said innocently, "Daddy, you're always too far away." I watched Michael's face as he looked at the picture. Something broke in him then. He pulled Emily into his arms and held her tightly, his shoulders shaking. That night, he came to me with tears in his eyes. "Claire," he said, his voice raw, "I don't want to be invisible in my own family. And I don't want you to feel invisible either. I've been so focused on providing that I forgot how to be present. I forgot what really matters." We stayed up for hours talking, really talking, like we hadn't done in years. I told him about the loneliness, about how I missed us. He told me about the pressure he felt at work, about the fear of not being enough for us financially. It didn't fix everything overnight, but it was the beginning of something new. Slowly, we started rebuilding. Michael began setting boundaries with his job, making sure he was home for family dinners. On Friday nights, after the kids went to bed, we started dancing in the living room again, barefoot, and laughing like we were young. I started painting again, a hobby I had abandoned long ago, and he surprised me by setting up a little studio in the corner of the basement. The kids noticed the change too. They began to see us not just as two people sharing a house, but as partners again. Looking back now, I realized that feeling invisible was not the end of our story. It was the turning point. It was the moment that forced us to see what we were at risk of losing. Michael was my husband, yes, but he became more than that again. He became my companion, my friend, the man who held my hand not because it was expected, but because he wanted to. I know life will never be perfect. There will always be work deadlines, bills, stresses, and distractions. But now, we choose each other every day. And that choice makes all the difference. Because once upon a time, I felt invisible. But now, when Michael looks at me across the room, I know he sees me. And I see him. And maybe that's what marriage is about.